Basically, this is a continuing movement. It is not a industrial strike or a student strike where you are off your work and you are sitting on protest. We are on our work and we are sitting on protest. So
how does that work?
So that is very simple, because the formula is that one generation is on the field and one generation is at the morcha. So the work continues. Actually, there is a lot of spare time in agriculture. The labor work in agriculture is for a very short duration, and it has, I believe, been coming down now. So it gives a lot of surplus time. So with the coordination of the work with the fellow farmers, allowing them to leave their work on for us and we leave our works for them. So with this kind of a cooperative engagement in the works, a large number of people are able to attend. The work doesn't suffer. So it's absolutely unlike. That's why it will continue for many years. No issues. Secondly, this is an awakening movement. It's a growing movement. It started from Punjab, then took roots in Haryana, then West UP, Rajasthan. Now it's going to East UP. So it's going to grow. It's not coming down. In India, agriculture is not just a question of food security or food provision. A bigger role is livelihood question. A bigger role is identity question. If your village is finished, all your contacts, all your life, your relatives, everything is gone. So these laws actually, they threaten to finish the entire village life. They are going to make such a rapid, such a deep change in Indian society. That is what these laws are threatening to do, and that is what is being understood by the farmers and the peasantry. So it's a movement which will continue for long. Say for example, the lifeline of people's life, fuel. The government is not giving any subsidy on that now. The government is actually increasing the taxes and prices. But Vodafone is being given, Airtel is being given. Airtel is being told that whatever you had to pay us because of you having used our airways, that actually you can now pay us after 5 years. Yesterday's cabinet decision. You will be given loan also at a very, very low rate. The same has not been announced for the farmers. The same has not been announced for the sharecroppers. The same has not been announced for the fishermen. The same has not been announced for the tribals. So whose government this is? Every day these examples are coming and people are losing their means of livelihood. So this is being felt deeper and deeper. The only parallel that I can draw to this movement is the kind of anger and mobilization that was there in 1857, that far back, for several reasons. One, that was one time when the British state was, the British East India Company was trying to change the structure of Indian farming. What you will grow, how you will grow, who you will sell to, everything was being changed. Your credit structures were being changed. Displacement from land for being indebted was being instituted because it was not there before Cornwallis reforms in 1794. So there were large structures being made, changes being made. They were all being enforced in 1857. And before that, the farmer who was in debt was never displaced from land. It was his traditional land. He would go to jail for not paying the dues, but the lagan, but he would be the owner of the land. So with these kind of wide changes, and then the kings who stood by the farmers, they were being replaced. Their kingdoms were being replaced. So it was that kind of a big structural change that was being sought at that time. A similar structural change is being sought now. The farmers have risen because they see that there's nothing to offer on the liberalized market. Make in India, sell abroad is not something which is making Indian economy push up. Still, the biggest growing sector in the Indian economy is the share market. The production is not rising, manufacturing is not rising, services are not improving and rising. So agriculture is also not rising. So people see agriculture as something which will still sustain them. After all, when the COVID crisis came and when there were lockdowns, 2 crore people did walk back home. So where is the security? The people are saying where the security lies. So So that is something which I feel that now this uprising which is coming up, this is something in that dimension, because the traders are with you, particularly in Punjab. The other middle class is also with you, particularly in Punjab. And I feel that this is sure to rise, because whatever the gimmicks of the media and the RSS and the corporate, people are going to realize slowly that this is something which is going to finish their entire life patterns. And with this kind of uprising coming up, the movement is going to sustain and stay for long. And I think that it is moving actually towards a new economics policy structure, where the government is being asked to secure the life of the poorest sections, the working people, not the corporate. The corporate structure is dependent on cheap labor, cheap resources, and an assured market. So the corporate is not an industry. The corporate is it's an interest-bearing menace. The corporate is a conglomeration of the manufacturing sector, the banking sector, and the government. So actually, it is led by the finance capital. So the one parameter which is common to all corporate is that it has to earn minimum interest value. That has to be taken off. It can only be done by extraction from a helpless people. So you have the full road construction industry, and the problem is that everybody has to pay a toll on it. It is not for India's development, it's not for the people. You have to pay a toll. You have a program of Ujjwala Yojana, so your gas cylinder prices have risen 2 times already. And you have a modern agriculture plan, so your fertilizer cost has risen, your electricity tariff has risen, your diesel tariff has risen. So it means that modern life means a corporate led provision of the services which, as per the Contract Act, they are going to sell to the farmers, and the farmers have to buy it. There is no escape. I mean, if you read section 16 of the Contract Act, it says that the central government will issue instructions to the state governments for strict implementation of the provisions of the Act, which the state government will have to follow. People have been saying Contract Act, somebody may want to follow, may not want to follow, it's his choice. It's not his choice. It will be pushed. Gandhi always said that if the police beats you, then you should be peaceful and sit back. We say that no, police has no right to beat us. We have a right to, it's our government, no? It's not a British government. No? It is supposed to be our government, so we are sitting at the borders. They bloody well listen to us. Okay, they don't want to listen, okay, we are sitting peacefully. This government probably doesn't understand what it has gone in for. So it better be aware, it has better understand that the mood of the farmers is to push. We are ready to push, we will push, no question. That's our commitment, that's our, I mean, there is nothing else. Indian agriculture and Indian handicrafts, they occupied, they contributed 27% to the world GDP in 1700, 26%. Today it's very less than 2%. You see, I was talking to some people, they were asking me about how will Indian agriculture revive? What do you see as the path? So agriculture relates to food crops and non-food crops. And Indian handicrafts and Indian food varieties, they themselves are so numerous. You would not have even heard of more than 10% or 20% of the cuisines. Now, if those cuisines are developed through a method where people can earn out of them, and they become a source of people's income, you don't need these craft melas of the government for learning about those cuisines. You don't need that INA market pe kya hai wo Delhi Haat for knowing the cuisines of the country. You know them through people developing them and selling them and marketing them. The government should have done that. I mean, see the kind of enterprise that the Indian farmer has. That a large variety of mangoes are, I mean, they are transplanted, and you can have a large variety of the mangoes in different areas. You could have even better varieties. All these geographical indicators, this vividness of the varieties, this can become a source of power to the people and a source of earning for the country. But then there has to be a policy to allow people to develop through them. The village life should develop through them. It is the villagers' life which should benefit. This modern technology for constructing so many highways, technology can be useful. I mean, you would need so many engineers to set right the landscape of the villages to provide for proper irrigation. I mean, there are so many subjects you can talk about for developing village life. People of Delhi should come to the dharna sites. People of Delhi should give their views, discuss. People of Delhi, intellectuals in particular, should give their viewpoint to the farmers and take the farmers' viewpoint. That will be a new awakening. They should come in big groups. They should come as delegations from residential areas, Chittaranjan Park coming, South X coming, something like that. They should come and interact with the farmers. Indian farmers and Indian middle class intellectuals sitting in Delhi, they have been separated into different worlds. There is a flyover India and there is a slum India. So I think this is an opportunity. It's a very big opportunity. In large numbers, people from colleges are not open, but otherwise we could have asked that of the colleges. My message is that from universities, from all intellectual centers, delegations should come. All Saturdays, Sundays should be booked for such delegations. We'll organize the camps, and we will sit quiet in those meetings. Leaders will sit quiet in those meetings. It's a chance for India to be built, and the farmers are in the forefront.